All right, man. Have you worked out yet today?
No, but I have one on the books, Pat, and I can't tell you what it is because it's one of the semi-final workouts that we're going to be releasing
Okay.
in a little while here.
Are you going to go RX Plus?
I am not. I've cherry-picked the one that favors me the most. It's actually one of the ones that I can do, so maybe that gives some people a hint if this is released before those workouts are. But yeah, it'll be a good one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. I did a little one yesterday, kind of like what I would call a heavy day at a high heart rate. And man, my biscuits are burnt today. It's your favorite deal, 10 down to 1.
Oh, I love a 10 down to 1. Yep.
Of a back squat.
Okay.
I used 185. A ring row, which you're supposed to make it difficult, so I put my feet on a box, and a burpee.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I get it back. It's back squat, burpee, and then the ring row is last, 10 down to 1. And the little extra little extra spice on the end is after each set of ring rows, you do a 12-second L-sit. So that will accumulate 120 seconds worth of L-sit that doesn't seem like much in these 12-second chunks, but they're miserable immediately and they affect everything else. And you're holding your midline tight on the ring rows, and of course you need it in the back squat. And so anyway, my biscuits they're burnt today, but
Yeah. Well, and that's, it's funny you mentioned the L-sit. Such a devastating, simple movement, but particularly when you're breathing heavy, it's really difficult. I mean, 12 seconds definitely adds up as the sets go on, but
it does.
But breathing heavy and trying to stabilize, that's
in
tough.
the overall umbrella of like, hey, no matter how long you've been doing this stuff, you can still scale and modify. If you saw my L-sits yesterday, they were not L-sits, Adrian. they were a bent knee to chest. Not that I've ever been a beast at L-sits, but shocking. Having a total hip replacement affects your hip flexors a little bit, and man, they were tough, dude. They were tough, and in just adding my knees to my chest for those 12 seconds, I broke up plenty of them because I couldn't do the 12 seconds. Like, it was very humbling. But anyway, here's what we've got. We got a good question today, a two-parter that we should be able to move through at a nice pace. And we've got, I'm going to do the business of the day, the shout out. So, hey, we appreciate you, everybody. Want to help support the show? Go to variednotrandom.com. We got tons of different cycles to make you into just a ferocious beast of fitness. Help you get your first whatever you need, strict pull-up, handstand walk, dip, muscle up. We have nice progressions to get you there. There's some just straight up barbell capacity programs as well. There's running, there's on-ramps. So go ahead and check that out. If you're a gym owner, we have you covered with an all-in-one solution, so you don't have to use multiple platforms anymore. btwb has an all-in-one that handles workout tracking, gym management, and billing all together. So go to btwb.com if you're a gym owner and check that out. Okay. This is, I don't know where this came from. Must have been through Instagram or something, but we got a question here from somebody, a woman sent this in, and her handle anyway, she calls herself Lumpy Shame 50, which is fantastic. And there's a little story to that, because we previously took a question a long time ago where somebody's handle was Lumpy Shame 402, and she references this. So she says, "Hi, I love the podcast, and I laughed like a loon listening to the Lumpy Shame 402 episode. I have two questions for you. Number one, what do you consider the best substitute for pull-ups if you don't have regular access to a pull-up bar? And secondly, best fitness regime to maintain or improve body composition with age. Is supplemental bodybuilding or a lifting bias program required to maintain muscle mass? I'll be 50 this year, and my knee does not enjoy box jump, lunging, or some dynamic lateral movements. I scale a lot of workouts these days, but I still seem to be losing muscle mass dramatically. Signed, Lumpy Shame 50.
Man, the old lumpy shame.
It's so great. Do you want to do the best substitutes for pull-ups without regular access to a bar first?
Sure. I mean, I feel like that one's pretty cut and dry. We can move through that pretty quick. And I feel like we've talked about some of these variations in the past. I think you hit it right on the head earlier when you were talking about your workout. The ring row is number one. If you can string up some rings. I mean, it's a criminally underrated movement anyway. You will not be shortchanged by doing some legit ring rows, and they can grow with you. You can walk your feet out further from the the horizontal position into a more upright position to make it easier. If you're not quite there yet, you can go all the way down to that horizontal or even legs elevated position. And if you're really strict with your movement, maintaining a nice neutral position, they get hard in a hurry. So I would argue that that's probably the go-to. If there was no other option available, you wouldn't be shortchanged with that one. And if you can also put a barbell in the J hooks low, and you can use some rope or some bands to secure it. You just got to make sure you really do a good job of that so it can't come out.
Right.
But secure it to the J hooks, and then you can use that bar as a low bar to do the same thing, a bar row as opposed to a ring row. That's an awesome exercise also.
I don't want to get my names mixed up, but I think if you secure a bar really nicely in a rack like that and you do some pull-ups, I think those are also called Australian pull-ups, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
I could be mistaken, but
I've never heard that.
I'll Venmo you some money later because you said exactly what I wanted to say. And
yeah,
and I think Linchpin gets sick of me saying that. Man, I love ring rows, like for all the reasons that you said, and just to tap on them a little bit more. Man, they're so great, and I would say, depending upon how you modify them, you can make them equally hard as strict pull-ups, which is great, but yet you could have somebody totally deconditioned do them with the same set of low-hanging rings. They're very cost-effective. I know everyone's on a budget, but they're not that much. They don't weigh much, so the shipping's not bad. With those straps, you can get kind of creative where you hang them. They, of course, make adapters that you can bolt to your wall or to your ceiling if you can modify your apartment or home like that, or a garage. But you can probably find somewhere to set them, and they are excellent. And all you need to be with the ring rows is have a basic understanding of what you just said, how to use them, the scaling or progression, if you will, largely based upon the angle of your body, and you just have to be consistent. And if you do those two things, I'll say it, you'll get a pull-up, and you'll improve at them because they're so hard. And then you can put your feet up on a box, like I said earlier. You can do simple things like, once the rings touch your chest, hold it for like a 1/1000, 2/1000, and then all of a sudden what seemed to be a simple set of 10 ring rows becomes astonishingly hard. You can control the tempo of the when you pull them to your chest, when you extend your arms back again, slowing that down and doing it over the course of a 1/1000, 2/1000, 3/1000. Playing with the tempo can make them so hard. And then you can eventually even get to the point where you're kind of in between doing a ring row and a pull-up. So if you picture your ring row, your body's planked out, and then picture like that position that you would be in if you were in an L-sit. Now imagine you're in an L-sit, your butts, your hamstrings, calves, you're sitting on the ground, your torso's at 90 degrees, your arms are extended overhead, and you're holding onto the rings. And now you do a pull-up. So now you're not really rowing the rings to your chest. You're doing much more the direction that you would be for a pull-up, but your body maintains that 90-degree arc. And you have got this little lever. It's kind of a little bit of an assist where it can be more difficult than a ring row, but not as difficult as a pull-up. Man, they are so infinitely scalable. They are such a fantastic tool. So that would be my number one. We touched on the Australian pull-ups or the rack pulls as well. And then, of course, if you've got barbells, dumbbells, or whatever, you can do bent over rows are also just a fantastic thing to do. So those would be the ones that kind of flood my mind right away.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that.
And then just stick with them. So, okay, now we've got this lady. She's going to be 50 this year. I'm right there with you, my friend. In 2025, the clock's going to tick 50 for me.
Really?
And so,
yeah. I thought you had a year or two.
No. I'll be 50. I'll be 50 this year. Yeah.
Oh, nice. All right.
And muscle mass, things like that. Like, don't get me wrong. I hear you. It doesn't get easier as every decade ticks on to just get yoked. It is what it is. And so, what should she consider? Does she have to just do supplemental bodybuilding, lifting-based program? She scales a lot. Again, I'm right there with you, my friend, as well. And I think we've got some good stuff that can get you consistent and hopefully put you on the best track possible to not losing muscle mass and staying as fit, fast, and strong as you can with every year that goes by. So I got some stuff. If you want to dive in, whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple things. I would say that the number one recommendation for me, followed closely by my number two recommendation, but the number one is what is happening in the kitchen. I think that if you're going to preserve muscle mass or try to build it, you got to have the protein, and you got to be focused on that. Basically every meal should have a nice healthy dose of protein. So your daily protein intake is not a question. To me, that's going to be a huge factor, if not the most important factor to preserving that muscle mass. So I would start there before any other questions about what does your program look like currently? Where have you been in the past as far as muscle mass? Are you somebody who's been in shape for decades and you're just trying to hang on? Is this something you found later in life? I mean, these are all going to be factors to some degree, but the number one, no matter who you are, what your athletic background or fitness background is, it's like, all right, is it being supported by enough daily protein intake? And I'll say this too, not to generalize, but I'm going to. Particularly women, and I think particularly women in that age bracket tend to not eat enough protein. Not true across the board. I think, CrossFit, of course, has really done a lot to educate people and to, prove that there are plenty of fit, strong women out there that
100%.
Do the right things and get that work in there. But if you're just taking a poll of the average 50-year-old woman and you had to make a bet right now, are they getting enough daily protein intake or not? I'm taking not every single day of the week. So that's, in my opinion, the first place to look.
I had that written down. So yes, you got it. I'll do my best. Sometimes I just say the darn same thing again. I won't do it, but you're okay. Right. But it is totally true. And I don't know her background, the genetics that she was or was not blessed with, but there can be this thought that, maybe things have come easy to you. Maybe you have been naturally, maybe have been what it hasn't been an issue before. Then all of a sudden things are starting to be an issue. You thought you were going to be the unique unicorn that the laws of age didn't apply to, but it's most likely going to apply to you as well. And maybe if a weekend of bad eating or whatever it happened to be, you used to be able to get over that and quickly, now it lingers more. Certain number of treats seem to stick around. Like it is what it is. So yeah, dial it in. So I fully agree with you on that one. I'll take that off my list. And now the one that I would now prioritize is, as corny as this phrase is, and I'll explain it, resistance training. And so let me define resistance training for a second. I would say resistance training is just, we're not talking about, jogging, swimming, things like that. So resistance training would also, things like air squats would fall in there, burpees, pull-ups, body weight movements, okay? But in it, walking lunges, things of that nature. But in addition to the general umbrella of resistance training, if you're looking for muscle mass and the things that you talked about, we've got to go ahead and talk about, compound movements and lifting heavy. So in addition to resistance training, we want to have some loading, external loading on your barbell with some of the classic lifts that really move the needle. Your squats, your deads, your cleans, things of that nature, and respecting the heavy days as well, so that you actually move the needle with them.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll expand that to resistance training. I think if we're talking in the CrossFit context, you could open that definition up to things that are hard to do for more than 10 repetitions. Now, I know 10 is probably a little high for purists when you're talking about strength training or, in this case, what we're calling resistance training. But, it's a big enough number, broad enough number, I should say, that I think it's going to still lend itself well to gaining and preserving muscle mass without being so far into that kind of stamina and endurance range. So rule of thumb, are you doing exercises regularly that you can't do more than 10? And if it's always like, well, I stopped at 10, but I could have done 20, it's not heavy or challenging enough. And that could be true for a pull-up. That could be true for a back squat. And so finding ways to challenge yourself with more difficult movements. I would also say that the volume matters. And I don't think that anybody really has to go crazy on the volume. I know that can be certainly in vogue. But on the other end of that, you got to make sure that you're touching those challenging movements enough to push things in a direction that we're looking for. So we talked on a couple episodes ago, Prelpin's table. That was something that came up, and it's basically a mapping out of loads at a certain percentage and what normal people can kind of tolerate and what's optimal. I'm not sold that that's the only way to approach it, but it can be a handy resource if you're kind of not sure how many reps and sets should I be doing for something like this. Well, that's a great starting point to at least get you in the ballpark. And then the other thing I'll say on that too, and this is an idea that is not mine, but many people that have worked exclusively or primarily with masters athletes have remarked that they see better progress when they touch these types of difficult movements or, heavier sets, less than 10 reps in a set, that sort of thing, when they see them more frequently than maybe some of their younger counterparts. So it might not be for a ton of volume every single day, but every couple of days there's some sort of heavier aspect that you see on a more frequent basis. So that might be something helpful as well.
And the other part of your question there, Lumpy Shame 50, is, I just had it. Do I need to do like a supplemental bodybuilding? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I would.
But maybe if you're just part of, Joggers Anonymous, then yeah, probably so.
Sure.
But again, not all programming is the same. They don't all have the same focus. All strength and conditioning programs aren't the same. But if you are involved in a strength and conditioning program, a fitness program that's well thought out, well designed, like an excellent CrossFit program, like you're not going to need to do anything else because you'll be doing these broad range of resistance training, your squats, your burpees, your pull-ups, your dips, all that good stuff. But then you're also going to squat and dead and press and clean. And you're going to do it in some sort of an overarching theme that all makes sense and interplays together. And you'll have heavy elements some days, and then they'll give you a couple of days break, and then they'll be able to tax you again, and you'll know when to press the gas, when to take it off. And you'll have this sustainable program that ideally allows you to operate at a high level, to push yourself intelligently, but then gives you the recovery that you need so that you can push yourself intelligently again. Because kind of like I said before with the whole, most people aren't the unique unicorn, right? You think that when you're in your 30s, what you hear down the road isn't going to apply to you, but it is. And the principles that Greg Glassman put out, I still feel are profoundly true to this day after having done CrossFit for like 20 years now, where, an oversimplification, but it's that intensity drives results. Like Greg hammered that home. And I have found that to be true in my 30s and my 40s, and as I approach my 50s. Intensity drives results. However, here's the however as you age. While intensity still drives results, how frequently you can expose yourself to a high level of intensity relative to your capacity will depend upon whether you're 25, 35, 45, 55, or 65 years old. That's going to play a factor. If you're 25, you might be able to burn it down 5 days a week. Everything moves in the right direction. You feel great, sleep's great, motivation's high. Cool. Maybe you're getting away with that when you're 35, but if you continue to work out this way, there will probably be some point in time where burning it down every single solitary day, maybe it's a slow creep. Like you don't notice anything crazy at first, but at a certain age in life, and it's a little bit different for everybody, well, now you know that intensity drives results. So you go into the gym, you try to smash it every day, but you're not recovering like you used to. And so now little by little, you're walking into the gym and you have less oomph to give because you're still kind of tired. Less oomph to give because you're still kind of tired. And then before you realize it, because it was this slow erosion, you're just tired. You're walking into the gym and everything's done in this mediocre fashion. I'm surviving till the next day. When that will hit you, I don't know because it's different for everybody. But it will probably hit you if you intend to work out in this style for your entire life on planet Earth. And so just be aware of it, take a real honest assessment of yourself, and realize that we're all on our own path. But I would say high intensity drives results, yes. And then understanding modulating intensity allows athletes over the course of their lifetime to be consistent with their training. And then that modulation allows you to still bring high intensity at intervals that make sense to where you are at that phase in life. Everyone's different. I'll just tell you what works for me. You don't have to do it the same as me. This is different than when I trained at 35. Now I work out 5 days a week. I never miss workouts unless it's like World War III is going to happen. So I train 5 days a week. Out of those 5 training sessions, one's always like a classic heavy day, and I lift as heavy as I safely can. That once a week. Out of the remaining 4 workouts of the week, one of them's probably what I would call a heavy day at a high heart rate. Actually, what I said at the beginning of the show. That's not a classic heavy day. That's a heavy day at a high heart rate. So that's now 2 out of the 5 sessions, which is 40% of the week's training. Of those remaining 3 sessions, I'm probably going to really try to drop the hammer on 1 or 2 of them out of the 3 that are remaining. And it depends upon how I feel. But me paying attention to that and allowing myself to take the foot off the gas on a workout or 2 allows me to then drop the hammer the next day. And I have this nice cycle where I recover, I can hit it hard. I can recover and I can hit it hard. Again, your plan doesn't have to be my plan. You might not need to do that till you're 61 because you're a beast, but just have it in the back of your head because you're starting to enter that phase of life where I think it's going to be something that you can't avoid.
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit and just talk about the bodybuilding aspect. I think it's interesting that, and I'm not saying this individual is in this mindset, but I do see this mindset creep in a lot where somebody says, oh, attribute X isn't being developed to the degree that I'd like it to. Therefore, I'm going to completely throw out the program that I've been doing and cut to this other thing that I think will get me what I want. Could be bodybuilding, could be weightlifting, could be running, could be whatever. You know, people fall into these kind of specific training jags. That's fine. But I think that there's a lot more to tweak before you get to that point. And again, without knowing the program, it's hard to say. But if you have a CrossFit program that is mostly running, mostly body weight exercises, mostly high reps, yeah, you could argue that it's well-rounded, quote unquote, but it's probably not as well-rounded as it could be. And yeah, there's certainly going to be some things that you don't develop with a program like that you probably should be. The answer isn't, oh man, with a program like that, I'm not maintaining or developing muscle mass, therefore I should do bodybuilding. The answer is, okay, what am I doing too much of, and what can I therefore kind of reappropriate to some of these other training outlets that maybe I'm neglecting a little bit? Try that first. That to me is always going to be a better strategy than just like cut and run. Over time, maybe you get to an iterative point where it ends up looking a lot like bodybuilding. Maybe that's the case. I doubt it, but maybe that's the case. But that should be arrived at incrementally, in my opinion, instead of just like, oh, need more muscle, I should bodybuild. Because I think there's a lot more dials to turn before you get to that point.
And, you know, she says here that her knee does not enjoy box jump, lunging, or dynamic lateral movements. So first of all, that's a shame, if we're being honest. Box jumps are wonderful. Regardless of the height, jumping is a wonderful thing to try to do for as long as you can possibly do it. Lunging, unilateral is fantastic. But however, if you're like, hey, I can do a whole bunch of stuff, but I can't do these few things that you mentioned, we can still make you into a beast of fitness. Like you're gonna be good to go. You already said that you scale, so you must have an open mindset to that. I think you're gonna be good. Maybe, I think you hit on a bunch of important things. Maybe the only other couple things I would say to make sure that at this phase of life, or any phase of life really, you are paying attention to. The stuff in the kitchen is extraordinarily important, but just sleep. You've got to make sure that you're asleep and well rested. If you actually want to go into the gym and train with any level of intensity and slide under a barbell that has weight on it, and then you want to allow your body to recover and actually build muscle. Yes, you need the calories and the protein that you should be getting in the kitchen, but then you actually need good sleep and rest to allow that to take all that time, work, and energy that you're putting into the gym. And depending upon what you got going on with work, if you got kids in the house, sleep can be a very precious commodity, but get as much of it as you can. Take it very seriously, whatever that means with like screen time, your pre-bed ritual, but get as much high quality sleep as you possibly can.
True story.
Regardless of any age, but I mean, I mean, for sure, if you're in the later half of life, which I don't like the phrasing of that because I'm there too, and I don't consider myself in the later half life. Anyway, if you're approaching 50, you're looking to put on muscle mass and maintain muscle mass at a phase in your life where, generally speaking, it's going to be harder, not easier. Stack the deck in your favor as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, for sure. I think the last thing I'll say about scaling, yes, kudos to you for recognizing when you have to do it and ways that you can make the program accessible to yourself. The other end of that is people, in my experience, often become a little complacent with their scaling over time. They start to get into the mindset of like, okay, I'm a scaled athlete. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But then they start equating things as hard rules. When pull-ups show up, I do X. Mm-hmm. And it's a non-negotiable. I do whatever my sub is that I've come to recognize as the sub for pull-ups. And there's no sense of progression in it. There's no sense of like scaling in its best application, in my opinion, is a bridge to the next thing. So what is it that I'm bridging towards with this scaling option? Eventually, it should get to the point where that scaling option is so accessible to me that I need something a little bit more challenging. In the same way that if I had only one barbell that weighed 135 pounds, sooner or later, I'm going to get to a point where I'm like, okay, I need to do something else to make this challenging. I need to look for a different movement variation. I need to buy some more weights. I got to do something because it's not just adding more reps. That's not the answer. So scaling generally is one more place that I think this individual should start looking and say, okay, at what point do I start ratcheting up some of these movements that I've scaled for a while now that, it was very appropriate to do that, but are we beyond that slightly? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you need to go full RX, but let's start taking a look at when and where and how some of those scaling things are approached.
Yep. Keep it appropriately challenging. Keep seeking that challenge, whatever it happens to be. So that's all I've got.
Same. Yeah.
Okay.
Eat your protein. Get some challenging movements in there that you can't do for more than a couple reps at a time. Hit it hard on the regular. You should be able to maintain that muscle mass.
100%. And even if you do that and some muscle mass as you age is inevitable, you will still be an animal compared to your peers. So you're going to be good to go. Real quick, what did you say the workout was you're going to do today?
It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a total sweat fest. I'll say that much.
All right, I tried, everybody. I tried. Okay. Yeah. So find this episode on the btwb YouTube channel. Post your thoughts and comments. Are there some great substitutions for pull-ups that we forgot? Do you have some secrets, tips, tricks for maintaining as much muscle mass and even building muscle mass later in life? Put them down there as well. We want to hear them. Ideas, topics for an upcoming show, post them there on the YouTube. And you can also post these same things on the Varied Not Random Instagram under any of the social media posts that are made there. Or if you'd prefer to be more anonymous, you can send a direct message to the Varied Not Random Instagram account, and we'll get those as well, and they help drive the content for the show. So, Lumpy Shame 50, I hope that we helped you out. For Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we will see you next time.